The alarm tore through my sleep before my eyes even opened. I was on my feet before I understood why. Red light pulsed across the cramped cabin of the relief cruiser Halden's Hope, and the comm system was screaming a signal that had been bouncing across dead space for months before anyone picked it up. I stumbled onto the bridge with my boots half-laced. Captain Elric Dawson was already there, gripping the edge of the console like it owed him money. "What are we looking at?" I asked. "A distress call," he said. "Old one. Really old. Been drifting for a while before our relay caught it." I leaned over the display. The message was in fragments, broken up by static and distance, but the translation software stitched together enough for my stomach to drop. A world called Vera, a civilization known as the Vaith. Their planet was dying, and they had sent this plea to every corner of known space they could reach. "Who else got this?" I asked. Elric's jaw tightened. "Everyone. The Cordon Assembly. The Silthari Concord. The old Empire fleets out past the Ashen Belt. This call went out to all of them first. We're the last ones to even hear it. And nobody's going." I stood there for a second, letting that settle into my bones. An entire species, screaming into the dark for help, and the answer from the rest of the galaxy had been silence. "Why not?" I asked, even though some part of me already expected the answer. "Because it doesn't make sense," Elric said. "Their system is barely on any trade route. No resources worth the fuel. And whatever is tearing their world apart isn't fully identified yet. Every calculation says stay away." I looked at the screen again. Through the static, I could just make out a small clip of video. A child's face, streaked with soot, staring into a camera that probably wouldn't survive another hour. "We're going," I said. Elric didn't argue. He just nodded slowly, like he had been waiting for someone to say it out loud. "Punch it in," he said to our navigator, a quiet young woman named Priya Bennett. "Best route, fastest burn." "That'll drain almost half our fuel reserve," Priya said. "We won't have backup if things go wrong out there." "I know," Elric said. Nobody spoke after that. The engines hummed to life beneath our boots, and the ship turned toward a world none of us had heard of an hour earlier. The trip took 11 days. 11 days of checking gear that was already checked, of running simulations on an enemy we didn't fully understand, of trying not to think about the fact that no other fleet was coming to back us up. On the 9th day, our long-range sensors picked up 2 other ships changing course near the edge of the system. Bigger ships, better armed. I watched their signatures on the display, hoping they were finally answering the same call. Then they turned away. "They ran the numbers," Priya said quietly, watching the blips fade from the scope. "Cost doesn't justify the risk, that's what they'll say when someone asks." I didn't say anything. There wasn't much to say. We kept going. By the time we dropped out of transit near Vera, the sky above their planet already looked like a wound. Fires bloomed across the surface like a rash spreading under skin. Orbital stations, half broken, drifted in silence with no lights left inside them. A handful of transport ships hung dead in orbit, engines dark, too damaged to make the jump to safety. "Talk to me," Elric said, stepping up beside me at the sensor station. "Ground defenses are gone," I said. "Whatever hit them, it came in waves. There's still activity on the surface. Something's still tearing through what's left." "Species status?" "Survivors," I said, my throat tightening. "A lot of them. Trapped in shelters that are losing power. If nobody gets down there in the next few hours, we're not going to have anyone left to rescue." Elric exhaled slowly. "Get me a channel to the surface." It took a few minutes for the Vaith communication systems to sync with ours. When the connection finally opened, the voice that came through sounded exhausted beyond anything I had ever heard from a living being. "This is Counselor Ashen Voro of Vera," the voice said, shaking. "Please, identify yourselves." "This is Captain Elric Dawson, human relief vessel Halden's Hope. We received your call for help." There was a long pause, long enough that I thought the connection had dropped. "You're human," the voice finally said, disbelief bleeding through every word. "We sent that call to 6 major powers. None of them answered, not one." "We know," Elric said. "We're here anyway." Another pause, shorter this time, thick with something I can only describe as grief, mixed with shock. "Where are the others?" Counselor Voro asked. "The Assembly. The Concord. Anyone larger than yourselves?" I didn't let Elric answer that one. I leaned toward the comm. "They didn't come," I said. "We did." Silence again. Then quietly, almost broken, "Thank you." There wasn't time for more than that. The planet was still burning. Elric turned to the crew. "We don't have the firepower to take on whatever is doing this from orbit, so we're not fighting it in space. We're going down there, and we're getting people out." That's not standard protocol for a relief vessel, Priya said, though she was already pulling up landing coordinates. Nothing about this is standard, Elric said. Suit up. I won't pretend I wasn't afraid climbing into that shuttle. Fear has a way of sitting in your chest like a stone right before you do something you know is necessary and know is dangerous in equal measure. But there's a specific kind of fear that gets quiet once you're moving, once your hands have something to do. That's the kind I had by the time our shuttle broke atmosphere. The descent was rough. Ash and smoke choked the air, and our shuttle's sensors kept throwing warnings about heat signatures moving across the ground below us, fast and erratic, not natural, not friendly. There, Priya said, pointing to a cluster of structures still standing near a ridge. That's the largest shelter complex still broadcasting a heartbeat signal. Take us in, Elric said. We landed hard, kicking up ash in a gray cloud around the shuttle. The moment the ramp dropped, the sound hit me first. Screaming, distant explosions, and underneath it all, a strange mechanical shriek that didn't belong to anything I recognized. Movement, I called out, watching shapes cut through the smoke in the distance. Fast, segmented, not organic, not quite machine either. Whatever had done this to Vera wasn't finished. Focus on the shelter, Elric ordered. We are not here to win a war. We are here to get people out. We moved through the wreckage toward the shelter entrance, where a group of Vaith were already gathered, trying to force open a jammed door with tools that weren't built for it. They turned when they saw us, and I watched fear shift into something closer to disbelief. One of them, an older Vaith with pale, cracked skin and wide amber eyes, stepped forward. You came, he said, voice hoarse. We're getting everyone out, I said. How many are inside? Nearly 300, he said. The door mechanism failed when the power grid went down. Elric was already working the panel, hands moving fast over the melted controls. Priya, get the shuttle prepped for multiple trips. We're not going to fit everyone in one run. Copy that, she said, already sprinting back. I helped brace the door while Elric rerouted power from a portable cell he'd grabbed before we left the ship. The door groaned, resisted, then finally gave way, grinding open just wide enough for people to start pouring out. They came out in waves, children first, carried by parents who looked like they hadn't slept in days, elderly Vaith supported by younger ones, all of them moving toward our shuttle like it was the only solid thing left in their world. That's when the first of those segmented shapes broke through the smoke and came straight for us. It was fast, faster than anything that size should move, all sharp angles and flickering lights along its frame, like a machine built with no other purpose than tearing things apart. I didn't have time to fully process what I was looking at before instinct took over. Cover the evacuation, Elric shouted, already moving to put himself between the machine and the fleeing crowd. I grabbed the nearest piece of wreckage heavy enough to be useful and threw it directly into the thing's path. It stumbled, just for a second, giving Elric enough time to redirect it away from the crowd with a burst from his sidearm, aimed not to destroy it, just to distract it long enough. Keep them moving, I yelled to Priya, who was ushering people up the ramp as fast as the shuttle would allow. The old Vaith man, the one who had first spoken to us, grabbed my arm. There are more of us, deeper in the complex, the ones who couldn't walk on their own. I looked at Elric. He gave a short nod. Go, he said. I'll hold this line. I ran with the old man back through the smoke-filled corridors of the shelter, following him deeper than I would have liked, past collapsed sections and flickering emergency lights, until we reached a room where a dozen Vaith lay on makeshift cots, too injured or too weak to move on their own. There was no time to be gentle about it. I started lifting the ones I could carry, calling for others among the walking survivors to help with the rest. It took 4 trips through that smoke-choked hallway, my lungs burning, my arms shaking, before every single one of them was out. By the time I made it back outside, the shuttle was nearly full, and Elric was still holding the perimeter, his uniform scorched at one shoulder, but standing. Last group, I said, breathless. That's everyone from this shelter. Get them loaded, he said. I'm right behind you. We made 3 more runs like that over the following hours, hopping between shelters as their power failed one by one, carrying as many people as the shuttle could hold each time, going back for more even as the machines kept coming, even as our reserves kept dropping. At some point during the 4th run, Priya's voice crackled over comms, tight with something between excitement and disbelief. We've got new arrivals in orbit, she said. Big ships, assembly markings. Now they show up, I muttered, wiping ash from my face. They're hailing us, she added. Something about assisting with stabilization efforts. Elric let out a short, humorless laugh beside me as we loaded the last group of survivors from a crumbling shelter entrance. Tell them we appreciate the offer. The worst of it's already over. I caught his eye, and for a moment, neither of us said anything. We didn't need to. Everyone on that ridge, human and Vaith alike, understood exactly what had just happened. The bigger powers had waited until the danger passed to make their entrance, arriving in time to help with cleanup, not rescue. The old Vaith man who had led me through the shelter found me again as we prepared for final liftoff. His name, I learned, was Ansel Voro, brother to the counselor who had first spoken to us over the comm. I don't understand, he said, watching the last of his people board our shuttle. Your people are small, your ships are old, you had nothing to gain by coming here. We heard someone asking for help, I said. That was enough. He studied me for a long moment, something shifting behind those wide amber eyes. The others calculated the cost. You didn't. No, I admitted, we didn't. He didn't say anything else, just placed a hand briefly on my shoulder before moving to help the last stragglers onto the ramp. We lifted off as the sun set over a planet that had nearly lost everything, carrying the final survivors up toward orbit, where the newly arrived fleets waited with their polished ships and their careful, calculated offers of assistance. Counselor Voro met us personally when we docked with the main evacuation platform, his face lined with exhaustion but his eyes clear, sharp, taking in every detail of our battered shuttle and the soot-streaked crew stepping off it. You saved close to 1,100 of my people today, he said, his voice steady now, though I could hear what it cost him to keep it that way. Across 4 shelters, while 6 other civilizations, with far greater resources, chose silence. We just did what anyone should have done, Elric said. That's exactly it, Voro replied. Anyone should have. Only you did. Word of what happened at Vera spread faster than I expected. Within days, other outposts along the trade corridors were talking about it, some with admiration, some with the kind of quiet embarrassment that comes from being caught doing nothing while someone else stepped up. I didn't think much about legacy or reputation in the moment. I was too tired, too raw from everything I'd seen, to think about anything beyond the next meal and the next stretch of sleep. But I noticed the way people looked at our ship differently after that, the way Vaith traders and assembly diplomats alike would go quiet when they realized which vessel we'd flown in on. A week later, back aboard Halden's Hope, cruising through calm space on our way back toward home territory, I stood at the viewport with Elric, watching the stars slide past in silence. You ever think about why we did it? I asked. Really think about it? He considered the question for a moment. I think some things don't need a reason beyond the obvious one. Someone was drowning. We were close enough to pull them out. Everyone else decided the water was too cold. That simple? Most important things are, he said. I thought about Ansel Voro's face when he asked why we'd come, about the child in that first fractured video message, about the 1,100 people now safely relocated to a new settlement thanks to a ship that barely had the fuel to get there and back. We weren't the strongest fleet in the galaxy. We didn't have the resources of the assembly, or the ancient reach of the old empires. What we had was simpler than that, and somehow harder to explain to anyone who hadn't been there. We couldn't listen to someone crying for help and do nothing. Somewhere out past the edge of charted space, another distress call was already drifting through the dark, waiting for someone to notice it. I had a feeling we'd be the ones who did.